My brother harassed my fiancée, but my family demands that I forgive him and accept it. Around 7 years ago, I, male, 27, met my now fiancée, female, 25, while we were both in college. Our paths crossed through mutual friends, and after a year, we started dating. Upon meeting my family, she was immediately welcomed and adored by everyone, including my usually reserved mother, who isn't typically warm towards outsiders. My parents are immigrants and have always maintained a close-knit relationship with our local community, which can sometimes be mistaken for exclusivity or prejudice. I need to mention my older brother, male, 29, who before a certain incident was my role model. His courage against local bullies and his protective nature towards me and our younger sister, female, 22, were traits I admired greatly. He often reminded us not to feel inferior or intimidated by anyone, emphasizing that we had as much right to live here as anyone else. When he met my girlfriend, they quickly became friends. Over time, my girlfriend became an integral part of my family, spending time with my siblings and other relatives on a regular basis. She would shop with my sister and mother, play billiards with me and my cousins, and attend every family gathering. It was at one such party that things took an unfortunate turn. The party was lively and ended with most of us heavily intoxicated. I even ended up sleeping on the living room floor of my parents' house. Afterwards, I noticed my girlfriend behaving unusually. When I asked her about it, she dropped a bombshell. "I think your brother tried to kiss me." Her words instantly sobered me up, and I urged her to tell me everything. She explained that some guests had gone to the roof to enjoy their drinks in the cool breeze. Gradually, everyone left until only she and my brother remained. As they continued drinking and chatting, she noticed him staring at her intently before he suddenly leaned in for a kiss. She managed to avoid his advances and left immediately, leaving the atmosphere strained and uncomfortable. After hearing her side, I dropped her home and later confronted my brother. His version of events mirrored hers. He apologized profusely, attributing his actions to his drunken state. He assured me that he hadn't been thinking clearly and deeply regretted his actions. Looking back on that conversation now still infuriates me. At the time, I dismissed it as a minor incident that could be resolved through open dialogue and setting boundaries. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a more complicated situation. Post the party incident, my relationship with my brother became strained. We hardly communicated, and when we did, it was filled with formal politeness, as though we were strangers. My younger sister was the only family member privy to the incident, as my girlfriend had confided in her during a conversation. We chose not to disclose the incident to the rest of the family to avoid further complications. A few months later, my family hosted another party, inviting friends, family, and community members. My girlfriend and my brother were bound to cross paths again at this event. I assumed that sufficient time had passed since the unfortunate incident, and this could be a stepping stone towards normalcy. During the party, I lost sight of my girlfriend. After a futile search, I presumed she might be with my sister. However, a nagging thought led me upstairs. As I ascended, I heard odd noises from one of the rooms. On opening the door, I was confronted with a horrifying sight. My brother was pinning my girlfriend down on the bed, muffling her screams with his hand and trying to force himself on her while she resisted. Without a second thought, I lunged at my brother, fist flying. My girlfriend managed to escape from the room and rushed downstairs for help. By the time my father and uncles arrived, I was still pummeling my brother, whose face was now bloodied, as were my knuckles. It took my father's intervention to pull me off him. After ensuring my brother was attended to by my uncles, he led me out of the room. Outside, he demanded an explanation for my violent outburst. It took me a moment to gather myself before I could relay what I had witnessed. My brother attempting to assault my girlfriend. My father was visibly shocked. He sank to the floor, resting his forehead in his hand, and sat in stunned silence for about 10 minutes until my uncles summoned him to take my brother to the hospital. Following my brother's removal, I sought out my girlfriend, who was confiding in my sister about the traumatic incident. After bidding my sister farewell, we left, and throughout the journey home, my girlfriend was inconsolable. She was a whirlwind of confusion and anger, and upon reaching home, she continued to cry until sleep finally claimed her. This routine persisted for a few days until she gradually found her voice again. During this period, my family kept me updated on my brother's condition. I had fractured his nose and dislocated his jaw. My mother seemed to be in denial, unable to believe that her son could commit such an act. However, I didn't dwell on it much as everyone processes situations differently. I also understood why my mother was attempting to rationalize my brother's actions. The last I heard of him was that after his discharge from the hospital, he was ostracized for his deeds, lost his job, and left town. In the subsequent weeks, I distanced myself from the world outside and concentrated on supporting my girlfriend. She was managing the situation as best as she could under the circumstances. She was still terrified by the incident and completely drained of energy. After almost a month of being housebound, she attempted to return to work but came back within a few hours. She confessed that she felt constantly threatened, feared imminent danger, and believed someone might harm her at any moment. Once she had somewhat regained her composure, I suggested that seeking professional help might be the best course of action. Initially, she was hesitant, but eventually, she agreed, and it proved to be beneficial for both of us. As soon as therapy commenced, there was a noticeable improvement in her condition. After nearly 2 months of therapy, her therapist recommended that I too should consider attending some sessions. The suggestion was not only to help me better understand her situation and offer effective support, but also because I had become socially isolated since the incident and hadn't really expressed my feelings about it. At first, the idea seemed odd, but I didn't question the therapist's advice. I thought it would be an opportunity to vent about the minor issues that had been building up within me. The first session was a disaster. I realized that I was harboring a lot of anger, not just towards my brother, but also towards myself. I had been suppressing my feelings out of guilt for not recognizing my brother's disturbing behavior and for failing to protect my girlfriend as I had always promised I would. I was also consumed by fear that something similar might happen again and that I wouldn't be able to prevent it. However, after several sessions, things began to improve. Both our mental states improved significantly. We even decided to take self-defense classes. A few weeks ago, I proposed to her. When I shared the news with my family, everyone congratulated us. But my mother remained quiet and later asked to speak with me privately. In our conversation, she expressed happiness for us, but also revealed that she had been in contact with my brother since the start of the pandemic. She explained that he had reached out to check on her and my father's well-being, offering help if needed, and expressing remorse for his actions. As she continued sharing updates about him, she eventually said something that almost caused me to lose my temper. She uttered, "I believe it's time for you to forgive your brother." I couldn't let her finish. I stormed out of the room, grabbed my keys, and headed home. Once there, I relayed the conversation to my fiancée. She was as shocked and upset as I was by my mother's audacity. I couldn't fathom how she could say such a thing. In the days that followed, along with well wishes for our engagement, I was bombarded with inquiries about my brother, if we had reconnected, if there was any reconciliation on the horizon. I did my best to sidestep these uncomfortable situations until 4 days ago when my mother rang me up. She had informed my brother about our engagement, and he was planning to visit the following week to speak with me. I was livid with her overstepping her boundaries like that and hung up on her. We haven't spoken since. Some relatives have since suggested that perhaps my mother is right and that I should offer my brother a second chance. My patience snapped yesterday afternoon when my father reached out to me, imploring me to be a good brother and at least make an effort. Even he wants me to forgive my brother for his transgressions. Suddenly, everyone seems to have conveniently forgotten what he did, as if 4 years is enough time to erase his actions from memory. I'm at a loss as to how they can think this way. At this point, I'm not sure what to make of my family, only that I'm deeply upset with them and have no desire to see my brother ever again. I'm posting here because I needed an outlet for my frustrations and my therapy session was rescheduled. In my previous post, I may have inadvertently given the impression that I was considering forgiving my brother. However, I would like to clarify that I have no such intentions. As far as I'm concerned, I lost my brother 4 years ago. Not all of my family members share this sentiment, but it's only a minority who are advocating for his forgiveness. I could easily cut ties with these individuals, except for my parents. My sister, who is also my fiancé's best friend, is the only one who truly understands how much my fiancé suffered in the aftermath of the incident. When asked about what I said to my parents, I told them that if I knew my brother was in town, I would cease all communication with him. As for what my brother has been doing these past years, he apparently moved to a different part of the country, changed his name, and started therapy with the hopes of reforming himself. I didn't inquire further, and neither did my sister, so that's all we know. Some of you have questioned why my brother isn't in jail. When I consulted a lawyer friend after the incident, she advised me that if I pressed charges against him, he could retaliate and I could end up in jail as well. Given the circumstances, it wasn't feasible for my then-girlfriend to testify, and my priority was to support her, which I couldn't do from behind bars. We did manage to secure a restraining order against him. One of the reasons I hadn't updated sooner is because we had both received restraining orders against my brother. My parents were unaware of this, so if he showed up unexpectedly, they would be required to report him to the local police station. Some of you suggested that my mother's attitude might be due to the fact that my girlfriend is not from our community. However, I assure you that this is not the case. As for how I responded to my family, I had prepared a statement for those who were considering forgiving my brother. I also gave my parents an ultimatum. They could choose their son, who attempted to assault his brother's fiancée, or they could choose me and their daughter. As I was perusing the comments on my previous post, I was struck by a horrifying thought that had not occurred to me before. The majority of the comments pointed out how audacious my brother must have been to attempt to assault my fiancée in a house full of people, and how my parents' recent reaction suggested the possibility that my brother might have committed such acts in the past, with my parents possibly covering it up. This idea shook me to my core. I had never even considered such a possibility. My preoccupation with this thought was so intense that my fiancée noticed and asked what was on my mind. Note: a few hours after I posted, I informed her about it and asked if she wanted me to delete the post. However, after reading the initial supportive comments, she understood why I had posted and appreciated the kind words and support from everyone. Thank you again. When I shared with her the possibility that my brother might have attempted or done such things to others in the past, it sent a chill down her spine. We then decided to share this with my sister and began questioning other supportive family members, friends, and community members about whether they had ever noticed anything odd about my brother prior to the incident. As of now, none of our family members recall any such behavior from my brother towards other family members. However, stories from friends paint a different picture. Some of the accounts we received from friends recalled my brother being overly friendly, particularly with friends or girlfriends of other family members. His behavior was often a bit too touchy-feely, but never escalated to the point of a or 0p attempt. It wasn't until my sister contacted an ex-girlfriend's sister that we got a more concerning perspective. She noted that my brother acted oddly around her family and that her sister, who was dating my brother at the time, became noticeably quiet in his presence. She also mentioned that my brother had a habit of being overly flirtatious with her. Additionally, we reached out to a former coworker of my brother's. She recounted an incident after a company party where my brother left with another intoxicated coworker. The following morning, her friend couldn't recall much about the previous night. This entire situation has forced me to confront the reality that my brother is not who I believed him to be. As more stories come to light, I am increasingly convinced that he poses a threat to those around him. As of yesterday, everyone involved has begun gathering evidence against him. Once we have compiled everything, we plan to expose him to our community on social media and to anyone else we can reach. I should note that I have yet to discuss any of this with my parents. Tomorrow morning, I intend to confront them with the information we've gathered and issue an ultimatum. If we find any evidence suggesting they knew about my brother's actions and did nothing, they will also face consequences. I won't be able to provide any significant updates for a while, at least not until my brother begins facing the repercussions of his actions. This is certainly not how I envisioned the weeks following my proposal unfolding, but we cannot ignore what has come to light. My fiancée has been my rock throughout this ordeal, and I have strived to support her in kind. I can't begin to comprehend what she's going through, but I am immensely proud of her courage in confronting her trauma to help others. Update. In my previous update, I mentioned that my fiancé, some friends, and I began to dig into my brother's past, investigating if there were any other women he had abused or attempted to abuse. Our plan was to collect evidence and ensure my brother faced the consequences for his actions. Ultimately, we found 8 women, including my fiancée, who had been victimized by my brother. These women were a mix of ex-girlfriends, former colleagues, and 2 current colleagues. I also mentioned in my previous update that once we had gathered all the evidence, I planned to present it to my parents and expose my brother's true nature to them. We also intended to share the information on social media. However, both of these actions did not proceed as planned. This was primarily due to advice from our lawyer. Our lawyer pointed out that if we shared the information with my parents, they might try to protect my brother and interfere with our plans. Initially, I hadn't considered this possibility. Part of me wanted to believe that my parents would be shocked by the revelations and act sensibly. However, there was a chance that they had previously covered up for my brother. Additionally, our lawyer warned us that broadcasting the information on social media could backfire. My brother could claim defamation, which would unnecessarily complicate matters. So, the confrontation with my parents had to be postponed. During this time, I decided to cut all contact with them. I couldn't risk them sabotaging our efforts or trust them anymore. However, I must acknowledge my sister's role in all this. She played a neutral party with our parents while secretly assisting me and my fiancé. During this period of no contact with our parents, my sister discovered more about the time when my brother was away. My sister uncovered several important pieces of information. After the incident at the party, my brother relocated to the opposite coast of the country, seeking refuge with a friend. Our family, showing some semblance of wisdom, had chosen to distance themselves from him. Upon establishing his new life, he spun a tale for his new acquaintances, claiming that our family had disowned him because he had been caught having an affair with his brother's girlfriend, a brazen lie about my fiancé. There were no legal repercussions for him at the time due to the absence of a police report. On the night of the incident, I had sent him to the hospital, which made pursuing legal actions tricky without implicating myself. This allowed my brother to secure employment and rebuild his life. He re-established contact with our parents towards the end of 2021, amidst the peak of the pandemic in our country. From then on, he maintained regular contact with our mother, and both our parents visited him a few times. Perhaps most shocking was that during these years, my brother fathered a child. The girl was conceived in April 2021 from a casual encounter, and they agreed to co-parent without marriage. In December of that year, my niece was born. He introduced his daughter and her mother to our parents and sister just 2 weeks before we had gathered all our evidence. When my sister broke this news to me, it felt like a cold bucket of water thrown in my face. At first, I found it hard to believe what my sister was telling me until she showed me pictures. The realization shook me. Not only did my family have to confront the truth, but now another family was involved. However, I quickly realized that this child was yet another reason to pursue justice. We couldn't risk her or her mother being in contact with my brother. Throughout this ordeal, my fiancé and I have been each other's pillars of support. The situation has been challenging for me, but I can't even begin to comprehend the trauma she has had to relive in order to help others. The least I can do is stand by her every step of the way in this process. Eventually, the day of reckoning arrived. My brother was at my parents' home when the police came knocking. According to my sister, the scene was far from pleasant. As soon as the police knocked on the door, my brother attempted to flee, but they caught him. He resisted arrest, which resulted in him being tossed and charged with assaulting a police officer. After spending 2 days in lockup, he was transferred to prison pending trial. The trial was a tumultuous journey, both inside and outside the courtroom. During the proceedings, 2 of the women my brother had assaulted broke down in tears while testifying. My fiancée managed to maintain her composure during her testimony, but once we were alone, she let the tears flow freely. I joined her in her sorrow, comforting her as best I could. The moments that truly devastated me were when my parents and sister came forward to testify. That man was finally facing justice, but the damage he had inflicted was already done. I felt that many of these girls would never fully forget what happened, but would have to learn to live with the trauma. It was undoubtedly the most challenging week of my life. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, my brother was found guilty on 8 counts. He was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison. In a desperate attempt, he tried to drag me down with him, accusing me of excessive use of self-defense force, as his lawyer put it. However, the judge dismissed this accusation swiftly. In the case of my niece, her mother initially refused to believe the accusations. However, upon being presented with the evidence, she became an active participant in our quest for justice. As for my parents and those who stood by my brother, it's going to be immensely difficult to cut ties with them, especially my parents. But their trust has been irreversibly broken. I know that I am losing a part of my family, but my future seems promising with the woman I love by my side. I now feel as though a heavy burden has been lifted, not just from me and my fiancée, but from all the other women who fell victim to my brother's actions. I am filled with gratitude and admiration for these women and everyone who shared their similar experiences in response to my previous posts. To all those men and women who have been victims of such horrific acts, I extend my heartfelt wishes for a peaceful life. For those who are afraid to speak up, remember that you are not alone. This experience has shown me that there are more good people than bad in this world, and there will always be someone willing to lend a helping hand. I hope that my fiancé's story reaches those who need to hear it and provides them with the help they need. It feels as though we've closed one chapter of our lives, but in reality, it is a new beginning for everyone who deserves it. Who is right in this situation? Write in the comments. Let's get 1,000 subscribers on this channel. Love you.